In the next 30 minutes, you will see 14 different farm-based composting operations. Each farm has different reasons for composting, including nutrient management, odor control, fly control, the income from tipping fees from off-farm organics, or the revenue from selling the end product. Much of the equipment you will see is already found on farms and is used as is, or it has been changed to suit the task. 6 composting methods will be featured as we move from one operation to the next. One or more of these may be employed on each farm.
I'm the 4th generation here on this farm. I got out of the dairy in '92. I was only milking 60 cows. I needed to diversify and do something else. Brian DeRose approached me about composting and selling some compost. And I'd been toying with the idea of going organic, so it fit in.
What we started composting was the manure from the barn over there. So that manure, when Bill and I started, was combined with some waste feed. And we started a tiny little pile around in the middle of the site. From there, we were able to talk the town into delivering their leaf and yard waste that they grind up in the fall. And we were able to start mixing that in with the manure, and that provided more of a bulking agent and carbon source and so on, and got us used to accepting loads from outside places.
There are 2 main reasons to build a compost pad. One is so that composting equipment can be used on the surface for most of the year, and the other is to offer some groundwater protection.
The pad over here that we developed can be easily done on any farm with pretty standard equipment. I came in and plowed it. I rented a rock rake from a neighbor. I raked the rocks down. We tried to get them down to 3 inches or less. Did that 3 times. Then I rented a self-propelled vibrating roller. I ran it on high vibration. I rolled it long ways, I rolled it crossways, and we rolled it on a diagonal. The pad is probably 3 acres. We invested about $1,400 total, labor and equipment, to create that part of the pad. So for an on-farm compost site, it works 50 weeks out of the year. DEC regulations for us to go to a higher tonnage level, they want an impervious surface. They wanted me to put concrete down or fresh asphalt. So I said, well, what if I put a thick layer of road grindings, because that's another recycled material.
Everything has been one step at a time. Getting in the truck to collect materials from some of the grocery stores. We're able to take in food scraps from Wegmans, Price Chopper, and Peter's Groceries for a tipping fee. It's not a lot of money, but it helps keep the equipment running and pay for some of the costs. The equipment isn't specialized. Those few pieces of equipment that are specialized are the screener, and you rent that for a week. Other equipment, the loaders and tractors and spreader, is multi-purpose.
So I use this to apply compost, I use it to mix compost, I use it to handle my manure. Sometimes it helps you spread out the cost because you can update and you can justify updating because you're not just using it for one thing. I updated skid loader because I wasn't using it just in the barn, but I was also using it to turn piles, and then I updated and got one with a quick attach bucket, and I use it now to feed the animals too.
We have about a 2-acre pad out here. 90% of this is farm waste. This is all composted for about 6 months, and then it's spread out on corn and wheat fields. Gary's pulling through a scat turner that actually moves the whole row a little bit each time the turner goes through. And that's all the mixing that we need to do on this pad.
We started out with about 60,000 square feet here with a retention pond at the end. The topsoil was scraped off, stabilization fabric put down, and then 8 to 10 inches of gravel laid down and compacted. Where the site's built, it was built right in between 2 diversion ditches, so we had to do a retention pond The ditches come right down both sides and come together at the corner of the pond, so we had to control the runoff from the pad. The water is pumped out and irrigated on the pasture land that's all around the site here. We need to use more of it on the windrows to get the moisture content up. The one we just turned was pretty dry.
What I'm composting are primarily agricultural waste products. Virtually all of it is brought on the site. I like to think of myself as a composting farm. In other words, compost as a primary farm product as opposed to sort of an incidental farm product. I just decided to start very small. You don't want to get into compost and say, oh my God, I'm going to buy all this equipment and do this and that. And I started my first windrow basically right on some old grass. And it actually was a hay field. And over time, it's been compacted from equipment. So we get a little bit of sun here, and this will dry out and be a pretty hard surface. When I first started, I talked to my neighbors around here, and everybody was very supportive. And I try to be respectful of them. I haven't heard anything. They haven't complained about odors or anything. When I first started doing this, I borrowed my neighbor's New Holland, older chain drag spreader, and of course it broke full. I back it in to where the pile is, and then I discharge it. I can make the windrow as long as I want. I can turn compost in a hurry with this. I'll take the windrow and sort of flip it from side to side, so it sort of goes back and forth like that. By turning the way I do, you're always keeping the same height. It will shrink some, and what happens is your windrow slowly shrinks in length, not height. By maintaining that height, I'm able to maintain a good thermal mass inside, particularly in cooler weather. It sheds water and all that. I really feel there's a tremendous market for compost. You know, it's just a matter of exploring it. I would like to try more of the, let's say, the other types of waste that are available for markets and things, but frankly, I really don't want to deal with the trash. And my goal over time is to expand a little bit more, or maybe get up to 1,500 yards of finished product, which requires 3,000 yards of raw material roughly to make it.
It's a vocational high school, and we're just in the agricultural shop. It's been around for over 100 years now, and they run a full farm year-round, whether the student's here or not. This was a great revenue builder for the farm. Between the tipping fees, $25 a ton. The landfill was charging $65 a ton to get rid of it. And you had to handle the manure anyways. We had to bring it up here anyway, so it just seemed a good way to take care of it and help us out financially. There's a food warehouse that we take a lot of stuff from. Probably 90% of what we take in is cardboard, wax cardboard, and it just saves them from going to the landfill. Diverting stuff from landfills, it'd be a great way to diversify from your traditional farming techniques. If we can just get them to cut down on the amount of plastics, it'd be great. Because there's a great demand for the compost. Without a lot of advertising, we sold out everything we had this spring, and I still have people calling me for it. We're so close to the road. I got to keep my neighbors happy. Sure. They didn't want to see it. So we planted a buffer of trees. But now with the turner, a lot of people stop and watch us. So I don't know if they'll turn around and say, cut the trees down.
It's old, but it's like I am. It still can get the job done. And we're doing composting here to help my depleted land bring it back to a productive farm. The bucket won't aerate it as much. It just packs it. And the forks aerate it. And so that's what we like about that. It's just a pair of three-point hitch forks put on 3 points. I welded a couple of rings in the bucket and you just put pins through. But these are basic forks that'll go on the back of any 3-point hitch tractor. We have a $10 tipping fee. With the grass, you have to be very careful because you get an odor, a bad odor, a lot worse than any manure or any kind of, and so the wood chips, I find, if you just drape the wood chips over the pile after you put somehow the wood chips take the odor away. I live right in the White House on the hill over here. My wife is the worst complainer, so I can't have many odors. If she opens the windows and can smell it, there's trouble.
We have over 500 acres of NOFA certified organic land and a composting operation. This pad now is pretty much compacted soils. This is the regulated site here from DEC. We have our curing pad over on this other side. After we screen, it goes through there and is cured. It has a slope and swales all the way around the whole facility, and it all swales into this leachate pond and is collected there. DEC had us line the pond with a bentonite liner a couple years ago, so it's completely sealed. We put out 7 different mixes, 3 different potting soils, a perennial blend, a nursery mix, topsoil blend, and our straight compost. We sell retail bags and we sell wholesale bags to growers. The retail is it's a tough game. See, these white bags now are wholesale bags that we sell, and they're the ones that go to most all of the organic growers throughout the Northeast, and that would be the potting soils and things of that nature.
What we do here is composting is to capitalize on something that we're producing that normal farms feel is just a waste, is a nuisance. We're taking the nutrients from the manure. We have a methane digester that we capitalize on the energy that we can generate from it, and then we take the nutrients at the other end. Some of it's applied to the cropland through irrigation and spreading, and then we take the solids and compost them.
It just takes time to do all the composting. There's a lot of people out there trying to do stuff in 3 days or 3 weeks, and this is really a process that definitely needs to take its time. We bulk our material up probably a little more than normal with some bigger chunk stuff. That allows us to have to turn less frequently because you get a better distribution of air in the pile. Initially, when we started off doing this, we hooked blowers up to all these bays and we're blowing air, and that was working and producing a good product. But then we decided, well, if we could go with a little chunkier material, we might be able to avoid having to use the blower system, and that's worked out very well. And for the past 3 years at least, we haven't used any blowers.
The JCB load-alls, they're leased for 2 years. We figure that we don't have the time to have a breakdown or whatever. I mean, if one of these loaders goes down, I need to have another loader.
This cost probably around $150,000, but the cost savings in terms of we're now at a point where we don't have somebody continually at the screen. We did purchase it with the idea of being able to move it around to different compost sites. This is our newest addition to the Moo family. It's a 2-acre compost pad. It's all crushed marble, and we use a shot rock for the base, so we ended up with some pretty good size chunks for the bottom, and then we finished it with this fine stuff and compacted it and leveled it. Originally we were thinking about just having this be a local market, but we found that there was such a demand and such a need for high quality organics, especially in both the bagged and the bulk format, that the business kind of just took off naturally. One of the important things to know about what we're doing with composting is You take the raw material and you compost it and you turn that into a finished mature product. But then if you look to get into a market like this where you're dealing with growers, you can basically take a $1,000 truckload that we would sell to a grower and have them turn that into about $100,000 worth of plant material. So the liability from the composter who's producing growing media is probably a lot more than the composter who's just producing a compost for agricultural or very basic use. We do bag starting in November and bag through the winter and spring.
Our mission is for sustainability in agriculture, and there's ever-increasing regulations and concerns of nutrients escaping from the farms as the face of agriculture changes in Vermont and around the country. So we're bringing in manures from other agricultural entities in the area and helping them manage their nutrient base.
Anything that's organic matter that comes onto the site leaves with a dollar value on it in either a bag or on a truck.
Composting is one avenue to help preserve agriculture.
This is a 150-acre organic farm, and it's been fertilized with compost since its inception. The farmers somewhere along the line realized they didn't have enough material here to make compost, and so we collaborated on this project to locate what I was doing on their property because of the need for higher levels of compost. So a percentage of what I'm making here goes on the field in lieu of rent. The carbon material is on the bottom. The carbon material is what's creating the porosity or allowing the airflow through the pile once it's mixed. By having the rotor 12 inches off the ground on the first pass, we're only mixing in a portion of that carbon material or wood chip. So that ability to raise and lower the rotor allows us to not turn the entire pile at one time, but to gradually add in the carbon material. A lot of these piles here are covered with this green fabric, and that's for moisture control. The stuff sticks great to Velcro, so there's little Velcro strips up here along the roller. Too much water displaces oxygen, and biological activity is decreased. So the piles just sit here, soaking wet, not doing anything. When the material's finished, or getting close to finished, it's really difficult to dry it out because compost holds so much moisture. So in order to not have to deal with heavy, wet compost, they're covered. They can still breathe. The fabric passes air in and out, but doesn't allow water to penetrate. So it's saved a lot of grief. They're not cheap, but it's saved a lot of grief in having to try to move and sell heavy, wet compost. They also help prevent airborne weed seeds. The other thing that these covers do is hold in nutrients. Because we're reducing the amount of rainfall that's percolating through the pile, or the piles are not becoming saturated and the water is running out of them, we're retaining more nutrients. So there's a dollar factor involved with that. You know, the more NPK we have in here, the more valuable it is. The problem with these covers is wind. I discovered sidewalls from truck tires from a tire recycler. They don't fill with water, they're not heavy. Well, they're heavy enough to hold the tarps down, but they're not heavy enough to, be a nuisance. And they just go on there. So we maybe put 6 per tarp, and we're good. This truck is used to collect food, it's used to collect horse bedding, straw, it's used to move equipment around and tow the compost turner on a tag-along trailer. So we have 4 trucks in one.
Bob Walker also uses this versatile truck to haul turning equipment to farmers who want to compost their manure but don't want to buy a turner or have the time to use one.
And then we bring this over, and we usually have to bring the tractor with it. So the tractor's on the flatbed on the truck, and this is towed behind it. And we go and spend a couple hours and turn their windrows.
Walker is also working toward setting up a larger centralized operation where material from the current site and manure from surrounding farms will be composted.
In the county here we have 5 farms all located within about a quarter of a mile of each other. all with significant manure outputs, and New York City people with second homes in the same area. So manure spreading is becoming an increasing problem. It's also in a protected watershed. So the idea of a facility to take manure, excess manure from farms at times of the year when there's heavy rainfall or winter, when guys don't want to get out in the fields, this new operation would be able to accept that. And this machine would be used to turn and aerate that. And this machine in particular, because of the windrow cover, dealing with the wet manure, we want to keep out all the rainfall. And windrows side by side, we're going to need to maximize on the pad surface. It will have an improved pad surface that is costly. So we want to get as much material on there as we can. And that should be up online by the winter.
This is an in-house composting system. We have a high-rise building, and we're attempting to do something different with the manure than what we were doing before, which was spreading raw manure on the fields and running into some neighborhood problems. We can go through the manure for 2 or 3 weeks before we add sawdust, windrowing it. It keeps the flies under control because it basically buries them in the manure each time. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, go in with about 6 to 10 inches of sawdust, and then go through 2 or 3 times and blend it together to get a nice mix. You get heat instantly. This will kill the flies, there's no question about it.
Once the material is removed from below the hen houses, it is cured outside in windrows.
Dairy barn's over there. We have about 550 cows in it. There's a concrete stall with a rubber-filled canvas mattress, and then we use the compost on top of that. It works just like sawdust in here. This is very dry. I mean, it's just dry. So if we get a clump of manure down there, we just scrape it off with a shovel and then shove some of this over the top so that it always keeps it dry. I think that's one of the things that's helped us with our mastitis is they don't have to lay on anything wet. The alley scraper is going to scrape the manure down to the pit in the end, and all that manure gets into a pit which is pumped around the end of the pond and into the separator. The manure just drops down around these arms, and 2 big rubber wheels squeeze the manure, get the liquid out of it. The liquid comes out here. This is on like a sump pump, and goes out to the lagoon. This is where everything goes. All the liquid from the separated solids comes through here. This pile was made yesterday, and it's really wet still underneath, but you can see the steam coming out. The fans are on this about 15 minutes on and then off an hour. And one of the things about compost is you have to develop your own system for what works. There's no book that says leave it on this long, leave it off this long. These holes are about every foot the whole length and about this far apart. So there's pipes that run underneath here that the air is blowing in through. We have 5 banks of fans, and each fan is feeding 9 sets of pipes going through, and that's the width of a couple of piles. I know that one of the expenses in this operation is the electricity, and that's running us about $650 to $700 a month, which is okay because we're saving some money on bedding. Now, first of all, I'm glad that we don't have to spread on a rainy day, and secondly, I'm glad that the cows are doing well on the compost. And thirdly, I think that we consider ourselves progressive. We consider ourselves part of the leadership in the dairy industry, and this is part of the process. Taking care of the environment is a big piece of that.
At the Fessenden farm, worms are used to add value to partially composted manure solids. The liquid manure is separated and the solids are conveyed to the aerated composting floor.
This is where the solids will be stacked, at least to the height of the bump walls. These are metal-plated channels, and you can see the air holes. Air will be forced up and will provide the oxygen necessary for composting. There are 7 fans, and there are 6 lines per blower unit that go under the composting floor that you saw before. And then the one big thing with using these worms with composting operations is your compost has to be cooled enough for the worms to survive. And it's exciting to see where this could go.
When the barn was designed, we designed it so all the manure would flow to one pit. And so the manure is pumped to the near end, to me, of the digester. Every day you pump it in, and every day an equal amount comes out the other end. So we pump it from here up overhead to a separator. It's a fan separator. The solids drop in the truck. The liquid runs back to that cistern over there. Okay, and that cistern has a pipe that goes out to the lagoon, and the gravity feeds out to the lagoon. This lagoon is lined because the water table here is, well, it's probably down about 20 feet maybe. When the solids come off the separator, it's been in the digester for 40 days, so a lot of the process has already been done. And the truck comes down and dumps them in a windrow. It's just off the digester, just separated last night. We turn the windrows probably, say 4 times, probably once every 10 days or so. We were just, as I tell people, just dumb lucky enough to be using kill-dried shavings for bedding. And that appears to be the right amount of carbon to work with the manure to make a nice finished compost. We have a wonderful product, and I'm pleased. Now we just got to figure out how to make more money on it. Right. What you're saving on electric will more than pay for the investment in the digester, and you can use the separated solids to make compost and be another income stream. But this summer, with low milk prices, guess what? This money that we're getting for compost and the money we're saving on electric looks a whole lot better than it did when milk prices are high and you're not worried about the bottom line. So I think I'm getting a little bit of credit now that maybe it wasn't so bad.
We just didn't want any more slurry manure and decided to go with this style of system that has a belt underneath each level of chickens. And so the droppings fall out of the bird right onto that belt and sit there for 24 hours or so and dry out as air passes over them. The droppings don't get quite dry enough to feed directly into this compost building, and so we have them spend another 24 hours in this drying corridor, which has multiple levels of belts, very similar to the poultry equipment, where the droppings fall onto the top belt, they zigzag their way to the bottom, and we can load the belts up and leave it in this corridor for about 24 hours. And we bring air up through this whole hallway system from the chickens right through the corridor and into the compost building. And at the beginning of the corridor, we add a little bit of supplemental heat depending on the temperature and relative humidity. These taperboard conveyors drop a 20-foot pile, which is about 25 tons, in the front of one of the 3 bunkers each day. And then the machine runs down the length of that bunker and moves the entire pile back 20 feet. And so it takes about 45 days for the material to reach the far end. We provide some supplemental aeration for the first 100 feet of the 300-foot bunker, and that equates to 2 weeks of retention time. The first 2 weeks of retention time is where the most rapid biological activity takes place. Heating it up to 145, or heating itself up to 145 degrees Fahrenheit virtually overnight, and then getting turned by that machine results in pretty rapid breakdown of the droppings. And so your surface area increases a lot, your activity increases a lot, and so you need, we believe that you need a little bit of supplemental aeration in order to minimize the anaerobic activity. This is not just a manure composting facility, it's a manure storage facility. And this machine can not only double stack, but you can do multiples of that double stack so that you can get a pretty big pile at the back end of the bunker, because the demand for this product is very seasonal. And that's one thing that all composters should know. It's not something where you're selling a 365th of it each day. We're not really trying to produce a compost, we're producing an organic fertilizer. Our normal product we sell for $60 a ton, which earns us a small profit on it. We figure our break-even's about $50 a ton. So flies are going to be virtually extinct. We'll complain to our neighbors when we find flies on our farm. We'll call up the neighboring resident, hey, you taking the garbage out?
We run the Country Butcher Shop. We're a custom slaughter facility in Union Springs, New York. And we've been in business about 7 years. And the composting project started from the problem of disposing our waste from the butcher shop, our offal and the blood waste. When we started out, the service was free, the pickup service. And over time, the service was up to, I believe now, $35 a day for pickup service.
They also wanted the paunch manure removed from the offal, which we would have had to have gotten rid of, and it's very time consuming.
So we attended a seminar at Cornell and found that we could compost this waste right here on the farm and use the nutrients as a soil amendment. And so far, it's worked out real good for us. And occasionally we get an animal in that a farmer had a problem with, broken leg, or possibly we find a cancerous tumor. We'll apply the whole animal to the pile. We've done that 2 or 3 times, and it breaks down beautiful. We put the whole carcass in a couple months. You turn the pile and it's gone. It's amazing. Our main goal here was to dispose of the waste with a minimum of odor. So what we're doing is we're sealing our waste in amongst horse manure and wood chips, and we may turn every 2 to 3 months and then reseal the row with another foot of wood chips. Jeff's in the process of making a new static pile. We put down at least 12 inches of the composted horse manure and wood chips. This pile will not be turned. You can see the aeration holes in the side of this. Jeff has made somewhat of a little trough, a berm on each side of the compost, and this is where he'll deposit the meat scraps. There'll be high moisture, and they'll start to drain right down into the pile right here. Jeff follows this phase up by covering this material with the horse manure, leaves, and wood chips. They put a minimum of 12 inches of material on top of the pile. That acts to both put the biological activity in close contact with the meat scraps and also odor protection. We'd like to apply the nutrients to our farm here. We have 150 acres, And we've also considered possibly looking into some organic production, and we would use the nutrients for that too.
Disposal of large animals has become a problem for farmers due to the cost of pickup and access to rendering services. Composting mortalities is one solution to this problem. You will need a well-chosen site away from ground and surface water, and a carbon source such as old hay, wood chips, or refused feed.
Shoulder blade.
With a process like composting, you can lay out your bed of chips in the summertime when the weather's nice, and then you can just put the animal right into the pile, cover it with chips, and you're pretty much done. Then you don't have to think about it for the next 6 months. It will work by itself pretty much. We get pathogen kill, so if the animal has had any disease problems or anything, there's pretty good pathogen kill. So this gives us a little bit more insurance that way so that the pathogens aren't going directly into the groundwater.
It's clear that you can compost more than just manure. Many farms already have the necessary space and equipment to get started. Farmers are composting to increase the sustainability of their farms and to comply with environmental and health regulations. More details on composting processes can be found in the NRA's 54 On-Farm Composting Handbook.